Hello, and welcome to another fun filled episode of My Dog Will Eat My Face. And I'm about to be arrested. Oh no, just kidding. I live in a city, so there's sirens, just the way it is. Anyway, this week I first have to say mea culpa because I did not have an episode last week. And I do apologize for that. So I carry my hat in my hand for that. It was not because of anything dramatic per se. I am just getting so tired, and frankly, I just constantly feel like I'm in a fog, more or less, these days. It's hard for me to pull myself out of it. And some days and weeks are worse or better than others. Last week was not particularly good. Neither was this week. There's another siren again. Sorry. Uh, if you're in another country, that's what American sirens sound like. So, yay, you learned something today. Um, anyway, the thing I wanted to talk about this week is advice. And how, when you're dealing with an issue like I am, and I bet a lot of you can relate to this because you've dealt with major issues, health wise or even otherwise, relationship issues, there's all types of stuff like that out there. And if you have any sort of friend base or family, you'll notice how their personal advice will come rampaging into their dialogue, whether you asked for it or wanted it or not. And it is about as annoying as those sirens outside are right now. It is really a topic I wanted to touch on today because it's unfortunately strained some of my friendships and familial relationships, even because people like to try to solve the problem as opposed to just listen. There is a strange human condition wherein they can't just listen to a friend or a family member talk about their problems. They try to stampede into finding a solution for that person when all what it does is piss them off more. And you know what? To be honest, I have to be honest here, I include myself in that. There's been many times in my life where I've had a friend, especially, come to me and explain to me their problems or a specific problem, and I offer some advice. And they never asked for it, so they just get very angry. They're just telling someone what they are emotionally going through and are looking for validation. They're not looking for a solution because they've beat that solution door down to death and there just might not be one. Or they're aware of a solution and it's a very painful and messy one. So when they're coming to somebody else, it's for support, not for someone to engineer a way out of there like it's, am I impossible or something like that. And I do it too. It's more prevalent in men than women. Hopefully, um, I don't lose my male status card for calling it in my own gender. But males tend to do it more than females, I've noticed, where they try to solve problems. And I just sort of want to address that briefly today because it has become a relentless pet peeve of mine with individuals trying to solve problems before me. And on top of that, I'll just give you some general health updates as to what's been going on to trigger these unsolicited advice forums in my daily life. So, let me actually just quickly recap where I'm at now. Again, I am sleeping more during the day than I'm awake. I have very little time to do anything in my conscious hours. And that, frankly, is why I didn't do a podcast last week. I had other things that were higher priority I wanted to do. And those higher priorities actually were just playing with and being with my dog at the time. Frankly, that is a higher priority. He's with me right now. He's cuddled up next to me and under my arm as I do this podcast. And that's the only way I'm able to do it now and comfort him at the same time. So it's difficult when there's only a few hours in the day, literally like 3 to 4 hours, where you can do anything. Because the rest of the time, you're just shot. I'm so falling behind on financial stuff and other things day to day that I'm really worried that I'm going to be able to take care of all my many things without granting someone power of attorney to help me out. I think that is something that's approaching pretty soon. And that's just the way it is. So, in that environment, along with the kidney failures and lack of being able to get toxins out of my body, I sometimes talk to people and tell them what's going on with my personal life. And I had a family member just recently, actually just a few hours ago, just say, "Well, have you thought about changing the dose of the diuretics?" And if this were in person, I'll tell you what I would have done. I would have given a deadpan stare and not even answer the question. I would just stare at them blankly, as if to say, "Are you serious?" Maybe I would follow up with a very sarcastic answer because I can't resist my own sarcasm. I have a strong push of sarcasm in my brain where I'll say, "Oh my God, dosage. That's right. We've never even thought of that before. We could change the dosage. I'm going to get on the phone with my 5 team medical professionals that work to keep me alive 24 hours a day and tell them about that brilliant idea because we never thought of it." Needless to say, this wasn't in person. This was via text. And no, I did not do that. But I wanted to very badly. For anyone out there who's dealt with medical issues that are serious and you have family members and friends where you just try to tell them what's going on in your life and they retort with advice as though their non medical advice and questioning as though maybe we didn't think of something so obvious, it becomes just frankly infuriating. And it unfortunately can tear down some of these relationships between friends and family where you fight unnecessarily. Because then they get defensive saying, I was just asking a question. It was a stupid question. Yes, you were just asking a question, and it was a very dumb question. You need to admit that to yourself that that was a very stupid question to ask me. Period. There's no way out of that. Sometimes you have to sit down and say, that was a very stupid question. It pissed me off. That leads me to a more humorous story, actually. I was at one point sitting down and talking to my social worker. I might have shared this story already, but if I did, I'm sharing it again. Kalam. But my social worker started one conversation with, do you know what I was thinking the other day? And I quickly, just snappily responded with, no! What an incredibly stupid question. How could I possibly know what you were thinking the other day? She just broke out laughing, and then I started laughing. Obviously, it was a joke. I wasn't really angry, but of course, she said to herself, "That is a really stupid question. Do you know what I was thinking the other day?" Of course not. Anyway, I don't tolerate stupid questions very well, and I either cynically respond or really end the dialogue and just might even just stare at them and move on and not even respond to their incredibly stupid question. But that doesn't do so well for social relationships or family members. And a lot of it I've managed to share with some of my other friends and even with my team, my hospice team, and they say, yeah, they see that a lot within a lot of family and friends. There's a lot of denial, a lot of people asking questions like that, offering advice because they are in flat out hardcore denial. It ain't just a river in Egypt anymore. And that is something where I think I've got to step up the fight with my own friends and family. Even though I have a podcast on this subject, I publish this as much as I can. I try to do it weekly, but as we know, I sometimes fail at that now. Even though there's that, they still live in denial. And it's for both friends and family. And not all of them, don't get me wrong, this isn't a universal thing. I'm talking about specific individuals in my familial life and in my friendships where there's people that are in denial. In some cases, are in denial only temporarily. They have flare ups, sort of denial, and then they calm down and realize how dumb that was. But even here I am with a podcast, and I still have to deal with that sort of denial on at least a weekly basis. Somebody says something stupid on a weekly basis. And so I've actually asked my hospice team to try to reach out to some of these people to try to talk to them and say, this is not just a petty thing he's going on about. And he doesn't need advice. Unless he asks for it. If he asks for it, great. And I have asked for advice at times. That's true. I mean, if it's something where I want advice on, and there are things like that, I do ask it. But if I'm just venting about something, that's not asking for advice, and that's where a lot of humanity fails to understand things. They think talking about anything of ill fortune or bad circumstances is a green light to offer whatever advice you can pull out of your rear to improve the situation, no matter how stupid and myopic it may be. And unfortunately, that's just something that humans like to do. Now, if there's any of you out there that have dealt with personal issues, be it physical issues or otherwise, you probably know what I'm talking about. The volunteered advice that you never asked for and comes off as incredibly insulting and stupid. I would implore you to do what I do and call it just that. It is a stupid question. There's no reason why we should forebo not what's the word there's no reason why we should live and forgive stupid questions. When someone asks you a stupid question like that or says something dumb and offers stupid advice, I say call them out on it. I don't care about their fee-fees. They obviously didn't care about mine when they said that. So people need to know when they're being dumb. We need to bring back shame in this country. People need to be told they're being dumb and to shut up. That's just my personal opinion. It would help me a lot if people told me I was being dumb. I do have some friends that tell me I'm being dumb and need to shut up, actually. And I listen. I have that close of a friendship with just a few friends to where if I'm being dumb, they'll tell me, you're being dumb. And I will listen. I won't get all angry and cranky. Maybe a little, but then I'll stop myself like, oh, they're probably right. This is my friend. They're not steering me the wrong way. So I'll usually take their advice. And it's good to have somebody like that in your life who will tell you the truth, no matter how painful it may indeed be. Because doing the opposite just makes things much, much worse. So, here's my advice. Get it? I just said unsolicited advice is a problem, and I immediately do it. Sorry. Uh, that was a really bad joke right there. Mea culpa again. But in all honesty, what do I think the solution is? I'm offering unsolicited advice right now to combat unsolicited advice. If you hear someone talking to you about their problems, just listen. Now, if they say, can I get your advice on something? Offer it and offer it with honesty. Don't be um, afraid of saying the truth. If they ask your advice, say it. And if you're hard pressured to say, I need to offer you some advice or I'd like to offer you some advice, offer it. And if they say, no, I don't want to hear it, don't do it. And there are circumstances, however, though, where you could say, "Can I offer you some advice?" Is probably one of the most offensive things you could say to somebody. So do it sparingly, very sparingly. And in fact, I would never ever do that, just as a rule of thumb against anybody, but anybody who's already upset or in a bad place mentally. I would never do that. Well, I probably would because I'm stupid, but I would recommend never doing that. And I think that might be the solution to at least some of our problems with this kind of thing. As for me, though, since I do have a medical team of half a dozen people that are working for me, I've asked them to reach out once again to friends and family just to update them on my diagnosis and my prognosis because they need to do that periodically just as a reminder that this is not just a stupid game we're playing and that I am being cared for. They may feel like they're only talking to me and I'm just pulling stuff out of thin air, but that's not the way it is. I'm working with a bunch of other people to take care of my health and my life, my quality of life as best as I can. And they don't necessarily see that. So it's also a good reminder to them to remind them, hey, he's got a whole team trying to help him with his quality of life. So honestly, that might help family and friends feel a little bit better about your situation if you're in hospice. At least that's what I hope. I hope that if I get my social worker to give an update, a general update to friends and family, uh, whether they're on the list of unsolicited advice or not, just a generalized update because they've not done that for a while. They truly haven't. And I live alone. I'm the only real family member in the state. I have one other family, no, two other family members technically, but I don't talk to them ever. So that's another story for another day. But the main people who I would want to have updates are very far away from me. So they're not here on the ground in the thick of it like I am. And that could be a very helpless feeling. I'm sure for them it is a very helpless feeling. And hopefully, getting my people to call them directly and offer them up and update and answer their questions directly would be something to help them feel more connected to the circumstances and be able to alleviate some of their concerns and at least feel more involved. And at the same time, just coincidentally stop them from asking very stupid questions. So that's my next and forthcoming goal for this week is to ask my social worker to do that. I'm sure she will. Um, I think they just need to get a generalized update all across the board, especially since it's been quite some time since they've heard something. And there have been quite a few changes since they've last heard something. So that, I think, is something that is probably overdue. And so I've already made the steps to ask for help with that in this coming week. The only other thing I can think of addressing this week is something I've already said, frankly, and that's just the overwhelming exhaustion and the limited time I have in a day to get things done. It is starting to get absolutely, debilitating. It's really starting to debilitate me. And because of that, I'm probably going to have shorter podcasts unless it's on a more complex topic. And as an example of that, I'm going to cut this podcast short this time because I've talked about all what I think I really need to talk about today. And I apologize again that I didn't make anything last week, and the length has been lackluster lately, but it is extraordinarily difficult to post anything sometimes. And I ask for your forbearance and tolerance as I try to share the goings on as I approach death. The really scary thing is this: I could make a podcast and publish it, and without me even knowing it, it could be my very last words. So I've talked to friends about creating a dead hand podcast that would go out if I was not alive to stop it. But knowing my forgetfulness and my stupidity, I could totally see me space it and have a podcast go out saying I'm dead. Well, no, that's my only hesitation now, but it might be the only way to get around that problem. That with each passing podcast, it may very well be my last recorded words. So that would be something nice to avoid. Uh, Maybe I could put a more astute friend in charge of the dead hand. That might be a good idea. Hmm. Anyway, all that being said, I'm going to wrap up this podcast nice and short and sweet. Thank you so much for giving me the time and the ear to have me talk to you in these times. It is very difficult, like I said, to get anything out the door as in terms of a podcast. It's very difficult for me to get out of bed even or do anything. So I appreciate your time fully and thank you deeply from the bottom of my heart for giving me a venue with which I could share my experience with the world. I often sometimes, well, I often sometimes, that doesn't make any sense. I often think of a quote by Virgil that has gotten me through so much in life. It truly has so many things. Endurance can master all things. And that's been true for everything I've applied that to in my life. However, my mortality is not one of those things. Endurance is not going to master it because it's going to lead me down a terrible hole of suffering that I don't want. So I've thought about that lately, that quote by Virgil in the Aeneid, I believe it was. All things can be saved by endurance. Again, is the quote. Or I'm sorry, all things may be mastered through endurance. That's the actual proper quote. I can't master my mortality. And endurance is something that may very well work poorly against me and force me into a very miserable, painful, and unrewarding day to day life. Ironic how some of these things that can get you through some of the hardest times in your life, as that one did, come to maybe fail you at the end, where their advice is no longer useful. Anyway, with that, I wish you all the best. If you wish to support the podcast, just go to the Spotify homepage for the podcast, click on support this podcast, or go to patreon.com/ my dog will eat my face. And you can throw a shekel my way, and I do respond to all inquiries on there. And there's a few other silly photos and stuff of me and my life on there, so you get that as a little bonus thing. But more than anything, it's direct dialogue. You can even suggest show criteria, which has come from Patreon before, so I'm not making that up. I have had ideas thrown to me, and I have used them, so there you go. But alas, for now, I must bid you auf Wiedersehen.